Well, good evening, finally, and welcome to OffPlanet Radio Live. I know the sound needs modulated here, and almost everything needs to be modulated right now. I'm Randy Maugans. This is OffPlanet Radio Live, and welcome to it. We're running late. We did not have a guest, and now we've got a guest. Actually, what we've got is we've got some really good friends that kick in, and I'm still adjusting my mic level here. Sorry, bear with me. What can you say? Everything that can go wrong does, and it's okay, because that's really what life is. It's like all of the shit that gets thrown at you is how you deal with the energetic flow. And so Chris Carter was scheduled for tonight, and I think times got messed up. He is in, I believe, Taiwan, the Pacific Rim, and as much as I try to line guests up with times, things happen. So I have with me on the guest line tonight, my good friend E.A. James Swagger is here, and we're going to talk about his adventures. He's been doing some very interesting stuff. Before I bring him up, though, I got a couple of things I got to bring up here. Those of you who are wondering, yes, Chris Holly will be joining OffPlanet Radio Live later in May. We have two shows scheduled right now. And actually, we have 2 more shows scheduled in June as well. Chris is going to be on twice a month at least. She is producing and co-hosting, and it's just the ramp up to getting all of this done. At the same time, I have Global Breakthrough Energy Movement, which is now beginning to take off. We're starting to do our first interviews there. And that's kind of an important project for me as well, because that's where my heart is right now, is, you know, to break the back of this energy juggernaut that controls us. So that project is looming large as well, and many other things as well. Next week, I will have as my guest, Groda Miyake will be here. She is a shamanistic practitioner, and she actually consults as an interface between holistic doctors and allopathic doctors at the University of Colorado. And we're going to talk about what happened to the shift, what happened with 12-12-12, why are you still here, and what do we do with the energy? And she will be with me next week. Let me not further delay in bringing up my very good friend, James Swagger. James, welcome back to OffPlanet Radio Live.
Hey, Randy, how you doing? You caught me eating a piece of toast there.
Oh, that's okay. You're allowed to eat live here, because you know what? There's no rules. There's one rule. There's no rules.
I thought you were going to talk for a minute. Yeah, it's good to be back here, Randy, yeah, and a bit unannounced, but kind of the reason I'm actually up at this ungodly hour is because I'm still on Peru time. I came back from Peru about 10 days ago there, and I just can't switch it back again. It's okay, I've got a couple of radio shows to do tomorrow night anyway, so it kind of suits, but after this week I really got to get back on track, so. But it just happened to be up at this ungodly hour, and I seen you come on Skype, and then I went, I'll just check out his show and see who the guest is going to be.
See, you are like the Energizer Bunny of radio. I mean, you never come on, you're never flagging for energy. It's always good energy. And it's really good to hear you again and to talk to you. And not just because my guest didn't show up, but because you and I've kind of been back and forth real quick blips on Skype, and you have been adventuring. So tell us where you've been, tell us what's going on, tell us about Peru.
For sure. Well, the energy comes, first of all, from the year of the dragon. So I have a dragon energy for sure. But, yeah, funny, you know, I was in Malta the last time I think we spoke, Randy, and I was doing research over there for my sequel of my book, The Megalithic Acoustics Mystery. And, you know, I came home from there, I went from 25 degrees Celsius to like 4 degrees in one of the worst winters that's hit Northern Ireland, and I mean, they were airlifting in straw from the British Chinook helicopters to feed the sheep. Like, the sheep were getting buried like in 4 foot of snow, and I went, I'm out of here again. I'm not sitting in this weather. This is like coming up to April, like, you know, the worst April we've had in the 30 years, like. But so I have research to do in Peru. I had a friend that was going. I sort of, you know, I had a niggling thing at me, you know, and it's not necessary research, I would say, and it's probably future research, not necessary for this book that I'm doing, but, you know, I just jumped on a plane and got out of there and just went back to the heat. So that was kind of the random chaotic travel plans I've had. So yeah, I've had such a fascinating time, Randy, going from Malta and the megaliths, the hypogeum, weird acoustics, weird temples, to all the ancient sites of Peru, and I was hoping to go down to Bolivia, but I never got there. I mean, I just stuck to the ancient sites. I actually took a week off to myself as well, and marched up the Salcantay Glacier at 15,000 feet, and then walked for 5 days with a group of 16 individuals to Machu Picchu, which pretty much almost killed me, like, you know. But, and all the energy that I have was pretty much drained. Like, I mean, I came home, I slept for about 5 days, like, but you know, so that was kind of the adventures. But yes, and as I enlightened you, I did ayahuasca in the middle of all that over there. And the ayahuasca thing is a bit funny for me, Randy, because, you know, I come across the group of people called the Hyperboreans that Philip Coppens wrote about, and I know you've had Philip on the show, and that's where I kind of got alerted to the Hyperboreans. But the Hyperboreans were known to have this hallucinogenic brew, which was allegedly blackish brownish, and I can't help think that was an ayahuasca, a lost ayahuasca type drink. For whether it was exactly the same as ayahuasca from Peru, people might find it hard to believe that it was in Europe as well. There's transoceanic contact there anyway, you know. So this is what I was thinking.
I suspect. Look, these are ancient shamanistic practices. I have no reason to believe it's just like the history behind the psilocybin mushrooms that have traveled all over the world, and people have written about them, and they're part of the ancient texts and part of the mythologies of culture. We have to assume that at one time, either through land bridges or transoceanic travel or whatever, that these cultures were somehow connected. And I mean, who knows? Sure. Maybe they actually had craft and flew.
Sure. I actually, for sure, Randy, you know...
I'm thinking that more and more these days.
I've turned up a lot of evidence for 3000 BC worldwide transoceanic contact, either by sea or not by sea. I'm not quite sure. I mean, you look at the Great Lakes copper deposits. They're 100% match for the copper that's found in the Bronze Age cultures of Western Europe. So it's most likely that the Great Lakes copper deposits fed the Bronze Age. I mean, nobody can actually find a place in Europe that actually can contain all the copper of all the artifacts to feed the Bronze Age. So it had to come from somewhere else, like, you know. So I'm always looking for transoceanic contact links, and I have Scott Walter coming on my own podcast radio show from the History Channel 2 documentary America Unearthed, and, you know, so I've been following that closely, you know.
Tell people where they can find your radio show.
Sure. Well, it's fine on your webpage, Randy.
I know.
I just found the link. I just found the link, Randy. But yes, CapricornRadio.com for my own show, and I've had some interesting people contact me recently. So I've got a very interesting lineup. A couple of Ancient Aliens TV cast. I just did Hugh Newman talking about earth grids and geomancy, which you're going to love, Randy. I don't know if you probably haven't checked the show out. It's only out today. That was really enlightening and fascinating for me too, you know. And
Hugh's an interesting guy. I need to get him on. Yeah, that's fascinating stuff.
Sure, you should get him on pretty soon because he's got the Megalithomania conference coming up. And
actually, he contacted me. He contacted me to come on, and I have no support staff, as you know, and
right.
My life has been disrupted, so it's been like I really have sucked. By the way, anybody that's emailed me, I'm sorry. The last week has been terrible for email, so that's my quick apology on that. But yeah, let me ask you a couple of questions. You went to Peru. Now, you actually hiked up to Machu Picchu. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that was like, I was staying in hotels and I was on a budget, because I'm spending an awful lot of money on travel and research, Randy. Like, I haven't worked in 2 years. I'm writing books. I'm going around the world.
Great life.
Yeah, it's a great life until the money runs out. But, I'm spending more than I'm getting in, Randy. Yeah, a lot more, but it's going to stand to me because I'm doing it the right way. I have to take a sabbatical. I couldn't do it, in my spare time. Like, I've seen a lot of the megalithic civilization from work in my spare time, but I'm trying to get serious about it now, Randy, and I'm trying to bring something new to the table, and I have. I've uncovered some interesting stuff about the acoustics, and partly, you mentioned psilocybin mushrooms, and partly, I uncovered this entoptic phenomenon, this rock art, that is indicative of all the states of consciousness, and naively I thought, okay, well, what's the reason for this? And the reasons are either acoustics or psychedelics, and of course, a lot of people favor the psychedelics, but I'm now favoring the acoustics. And, I thought I would naively prove it one way or the other, but I haven't proved it one way or the other. I have inklings and interesting information to share. Yes, sure, but it's looking more like, it was both. It was acoustics and psychedelics, which is even, more convoluted, weird, and, bizarre and hard for people to comprehend. But I actually had a group of people do psychedelics, mushrooms, because that was the only one that was available to me. They volunteered, they came over, I didn't partake in it, because somebody had taken notes, and that would have to be me, because I'm writing the book and doing the research, and it was at the megalithic tombs in the west of Ireland. I wanted to see them in the setting. I didn't unveil that much. Yes, some people did see entoptic phenomena with the psychedelic mushrooms, but they also partook in acoustics-only measurements. And then they partook in acoustics and psychedelic measurements, which was a bit messy to say the least, and a couple of them it was a bit intense for them, which is understandable, So it was just an interesting experiment. I also have, physical experiments done with measurements of the acoustics and the internal dimensions and stuff like that, with sound equipment, so I kind of wanted to cover all bases. But I don't feel personally that it was psychedelic mushrooms was the psychedelics that they had, and that's largely because of the Hyperboreans. And this is my line of thought, Randy, and this is kind of why I kind of jumped on the Peruvian trip. The Hyperboreans were known to have a temple in the north, which I discussed in the last book, and we talked before that is pretty much Kalinish stone temple that Philip Coppens wrote about. And of course, Diodorus Siculus in 4th century BC wrote about the Hyperboreans and this temple in the north. And this is going back a long time, this story, that the Hyperboreans had a temple in the north. But they were also known to have a hallucinogenic brew. So when I discovered that information and that it was a blackish brownish drink, it was a liquid brew, that kind of just piqued my interest. And of course then I'm looking at the acoustics rock art. I call it acoustics rock art, but it could also be psychedelic rock art that is indicative of this altered states of consciousness. You're talking chevrons, lozenges, spirals. There's about 40 different weird images that you see when you go into these states. So that was kind of my route. And there's also the serpent, these links with the serpents. And of course, ayahuasca is known as for everybody who does it, sees serpents, they meet serpent gods. So that was my route, and naively I thought I would go and get answers, but really the whole thing has transformed and changed my life. I am, as if I wasn't bursting with enough energy, I have more so I feel spiritually redeemed, and not that I wasn't in a spiritually good place either, Randy. I metaphorically, my head split open, and I had sun rays coming out of it with rainbows, and then pretty much the third eye pineal gland just went firing on all cylinders. I had serpent gods popping up to me, but they weren't scary, Randy. They were they were like fluorescent, effervescent pictures, or they weren't cartoons. They were something you would draw. And if you look up psychedelic art, you would see this on Google Images. But the colours were luminous, and the face of the serpents were peeling back, revealing a new serpent. And every time this happened, a question and an answer was being presented to me. of problems in my life, issues with family. It was a very much a retrospective stage that I got to, which apparently is hard to attain on the first psychedelic trip with ayahuasca.
Now, were you being guided by a shaman? Did you have somebody?
Oh yeah, I did it in the shaman setting in a ceremony, and it was strange because there was a guy from Korea there and a lady from Ukraine, and it was a weird bunch of people, and the shaman, of course, as well, and but I didn't know. I thought, like, I kind of went in blind. Like, I mean, I read DMT, The Spirit Miracle by Rick Strassman, and I'd done some research on it. I had prepped myself. I had taken vegan meals, like, but I thought the shaman was like, I thought the shaman kind of had done it a good few times and was well versed in the knowledge of it. But I didn't know he did it with you, like, and I didn't know he did it 4 times a week. So this guy knew exactly what was going on, and he knew where to put you, Randy. He knew when your body temperature was dropping, you were going on the trip again. Whether that was the euphoria or the trance or the retrospective or the visuals. He would turn you on your side. He would, he would tend to you. He knew exactly where you were at in your mind and what was going on, like.
One of the things, and I have a friend out on the West Coast who's also a talk radio show host, and he goes down and does this every few years. One of the things that he told me flat out, and I've never done ayahuasca, although I have done mushrooms, is that on the ayahuasca, properly conducted, nothing is hidden from you, that everything just kind of comes to the surface, all the good, all the bad, the visions. Sure. And so what you're describing there, it sounds like you got the full frontal effect of the ayahuasca in terms of actually beginning to get into that, because a lot of people think this is recreational drug use. This is not recreational drug use. This is actually a step into self-knowing. Would you agree with that?
Sure. I mean, by all means a step into self-knowing, Randy, but it's like a body shock too. I mean, your body takes a hammering. Afterwards, the day afterwards, you're just beaming with energy, but during the process, like, I mean, physically, like, and mentally, like, I mean, you will vomit, like, you will get sick. But the thing what I broke through the psychedelic barrier, as some people call it, is because I got double dosed, and the first dose, a lot of people say the taste is really disgusting, but I actually didn't mind it because I'm a coffee drinker and I like really bitter lemon taste. Like, I would eat chili and garlic and ginger all day long. Like, I mean, I don't have a sweet tooth. I haven't taken milk. I don't take sugar. I have a weird diet, like, and I'm partly vegetarian at the moment, like, but I take a lot of coffee, a bit too much, like, and I'm a bit wired anyway on the best of times, like, but it was like a really bitter coffee taste with a really bitter lemon, pungent, really sharp, like, but I didn't mind that, and I was able to I just downed it, and okay, it wasn't like a totally pleasurable thing, like, I mean, it was like, I was bracing myself with this ugly, repugnant taste, and that went down pretty well. And I was just so happy with that fact alone that I lay back and enjoyed it. And the other two people, they had vomited after 20 minutes, and that really affects your trip, like. Yeah. But I mean, I had that down me for 3 hours, Randy, and he goes to me, "Do you want a second one?" And I kind of said blasé, and I didn't mean to say it blasé. I said, sure, okay. Like, okay then, like, but when I'd taken the second dose, I was pretty much regretting it at the time, but not afterwards. I mean, I went on this one-way trip, and it was serious, like, and I went, oh no, I shouldn't have took the second one, like, and it was like, I knew there was only one way out of it, and that was to get through it. So yeah, I mean, it's not a recreational thing. I mean, at the start, I mean, I was going through waves of euphoria, and it's not even like any other drug that I have known or taken or whatever. Like, it was like just sheer bliss. It was like I was just felt like I was floating around the room almost out of body, and I was just speaking out loud, going, take me away, like, you know, whoever this entity is. And I got this feeling this entity was removing me from my body so that I would see myself. Like, it was totally out there. And I thought that was just going to be the experience. But, I mean, when I taken the second dose, it was like I was starting off in the middle ground, going up higher again. And that's really when the visual started. I couldn't even speak at one point. The shaman kept asking me, I was like, okay, and I went, strong. It was like, I was trying to tell him it was too strong a feeling, and I was like, you okay? He started getting a little panicky and worried about me, like, you know, and, you know, I was like, at one point I remember just lying with my head on the bed and just drooling, just lying with my head, and drool pouring out of my mouth, and all these serpents streaming past me at about, like I was on a roller coaster. And, I reckon I was probably about an hour at that stage before I vomited, like, so I had the stuff in me for about, like, 4 hours before I even vomited, like, so, I mean, I know, like, just for that sheer fact alone, the longer you can keep it down, the better the trip would be, like, so that's pretty much why it was a good, intense, trip.
Now, what was your total amount of time that you were actually immersed in the experience, James?
Probably, I was at the shaman ceremony for about, I was on the premises for about 10 hours, but the trip was about 7, I would say, 6-7 hours. But I mean, that was pretty much just like, now,
what was the environment that you were in? Were you in a natural setting? Were you inside a structure? Did you move around?
Yeah, I actually have about 6 photos. The shaman says, like, you know, if you want to take a photo, do it now, like, and afterwards, like, because you won't be even with your faculties to do it, like. So we took a few pictures, and I actually, it's like a circular structure with, like, logs going into an apex, like a giant wigwam. But there was
like a roundhouse.
Like a roundhouse, yeah, with giant logs now, a really big roundhouse that would sleep 20 people. And all the beds were in circular fashion, and his altar was in the middle. You know, and he was playing music and up singing periodically. And he goes, would you like more music, or would you like me to sing? Like, and then he would just stop. Maybe he would talk to you now and again. But it just a beautiful setting, like, it really was, like, you know. But I remember looking out to the stars and at one point, like, and I started thinking about constellations in my book, and I mean, I had stuff shown to me that I've overlooked in my book too, Randy, you know, and I've re-edited it now, and I was being shown constellations, zigzag symbols that are occurring at the Fornox Passage Grave is actually a pretty much pattern artwork that they have in Peru as well, which is another link, you know. It's this weird zigzag, it almost looks like sine waves, and that started to occur to me. And ayahuasca was like, these sine waves that you're seeing, like, you know, they're not to do with star fields like people think it. And they started telling me stuff about, you know, that I was maybe kind of reaching too much in my book and stuff, like, you know, and showed me the errors of my ways and stuff, you know. So creative and enlightening. I mean, not only that, I mean, ayahuasca was telling me things that happened like 3 years ago in conversations that people are not even in touch with anymore, Randy. And I had overlooked things in the conversation, and only when I'd looked back, it dawned on me that, like, I pieced together 2 or 3 conversations, and I realized that, like, I had overlooked conversations. So the memory retention, and I have a really good memory too anyway, Randy, you know, but the memory was just, like, boosted as well, you know. The whole thing was just really a roller coaster right from start to finish. And I know the guy beside me didn't have a great trip. I don't think he wants to do it again anyway. That's pretty much what he said. He didn't say how bad it was, but, you know, he didn't like the physical attributes that goes with the mental trip, like, you know. He didn't like that physical discomfort of the body. And I think I got off lightly with that, you know. There's some people do, some people don't. I have a stomach like a cow anyway, you know. I devour large quantities of food, and, as I said, chili and garlic and ginger, like, you know. And
so you got the cerebral side of it, not so much what they call the body trip.
Yeah, I mean, I think I started off on that body trip and that euphoria and that, like, you know, and then it went into the visuals, and then when I got to the visuals and I was able to tell the shaman about the serpents, he went, good, and he kind of almost spoke like Yoda in his broken English. And I just kind of was giggling to that, and ayahuasca's going, it's okay to giggle at that, like, you know, it's like, but it was quite a serious ceremony, but there was a bit of humour in it too, like, you know, and but yeah, so he was like telling me about serpents, like name your serpents, personalize them, you know, meditate, like, and I mean, even towards the end, after about 5 hours, I thought I was down, and I started meditating. I listened to what he was saying, and the other two really didn't kind of grasp, you know, what he was trying to do, you know, and when your body temperature drops, he will go and put a blanket on you. I had like 15 blankets on me at one point, like, you know, and shivering, shaking, and sweaty palms and that, you know, and, you know, I was just listening. I was trying to let him guide me. That's what I was trying to do, and I did that right, you know, and when I did meditate, I just came up again. I vomited again, like, you know, I just seen serpents out of nowhere, you know. I also had the earth goddess come up and give me a hug and love and give me compassion, like. She had, like, long, thick hair, almost like long dreads, but the dreads were in the shape of serpents. The tail ends of her hair had serpents.
Wow, almost like a Medusa kind of thing, huh?
Yes, Medusa, yes. You know, but not scary, like, and she was purplish. Well,
I find this really interesting because I've actually been doing some research into serpents, into the serpent image. And the whole thing's been demonized by people who don't understand the duality of symbolism. So I'm really kind of locking in on what you're saying about this recurrent image of the serpent and what that means to you as a personal kind of symbolism, what you got from that.
Such a good question, Randy, because I had a personal reason for exploring the serpents, going, what's the serpents to do with the rock art in Ireland? Is there a hallucinogenic brew linked with ayahuasca and serpents there? It seems very fitting.
Well, serpents are deeply linked to Ireland anyway.
Yes, so that was my personal reason for doing it. But I ended up having a personal connection with the serpents, and I understand the serpents religion that these guys had in Peru. I get it, like, you know, it's not an animal thing. It's like serpent gods, basically, you know. I also had anthropomorphic gods revealed to me as well, not exactly like the Egyptians. I wouldn't say I recognize any Egyptian gods there, like Anubis or, you know, falcon-headed, half-human or whatever. There was basically weird animals connected with human bodies, like, so I even had that as well. I had, like, everything thrown at me, you know. I couldn't have asked for it to turn out better, like, you know. And I was shocked, like, for about a day that it actually happened, like, you know. I was like going, you know, I had prepared for it, like, you know. I was like boosted with energy, you know. Even my conversations with people since it over the last 9 days, Randy, has like information's just flowing out of me, but not as chaotic as my brain normally would be. Perhaps I have synchronized the hemispheres of the brain in a way. But yeah, I mean, I do really feel there's serpents behind the ayahuasca brew and the earth goddess is there. I do really feel that there is an entity behind it, and I do feel that, you know, I'm trying to process it too in my head, Randy, and I'm thinking, did I concoct this? Was the information already in my head? But, like, you know, there was another event, I don't really want to say on the air, but information was revealed to me, and it happened the next day, and that kind of spooked me a bit.
This kind of goes in, yeah, and, you know, this actually goes into something else I wanted to ask you. And like I said, I've not done ayahuasca. I have several friends that have done it, and I have a standing invitation to get down and do this at some point. But Artemisia in the chat room said something I thought was interesting about the Hyperboreans being the escapees of Atlantis, hence their accelerated psychic abilities. It sounds like you were experiencing an elevation in what we would call your own abilities as well. Are you getting a sense that you have a heightened attenuation psychically or mentally in any way?
For sure, Randy. That's a good, really way of putting it, yeah. I mean, okay, look, not to be bragging, but I have a high IQ. I'm intellectually drawn to many concepts, Randy. You know that from engineering, physics. That's my career background. But the megalithic civilization, mysteries, ancient civilizations, any of the histories really, Babylonian, Akkadian. You know, I have many interests, you know, and you know, like, you know, but that's an academic, intellectual thing. But now when I'm talking to people, like, you know, I mean, there's facts I remembered, like, from, like, watching a Discovery program, like, a couple of years ago, that it was nature-based, you know, that's not really my forte, and that's coming out too. But, like, you know, it's like somebody posted a picture of, like, something that happened to me on the way down from Machu Picchu, like, and I thought, like, you know, it was a picture of the hummingbirds at Machu Picchu, and I had an incident where a hummingbird sat down beside me on the way down from Machu Picchu. I was actually in Huayna Picchu, coming down to Machu Picchu, and, you know, I ended up talking to that person because they posted the picture and having a 4-hour conversation of, like, going off on tangents and, like, really kind of natural to, not kind of ranting information that I would probably known to my friends to do. Like, you know, it's not like, yeah, psychically tuning into other people, I think, Randy, is what I would feel has happened to me, like, you know, and being more balanced about it, you know, and a boost in brain power. I definitely feel it. But yes, just as you said, on the Serpents and the Celts, you know, and you know, I really do feel now that these Hyperboreans were like a possession of the ayahuasca brew, and that, you know, it was handed and passed on to the Celts, like, because the megalithic builders passed on their information to the Celts, and it was like a devolution process. And by the time the Christians got there, they stamped out. That's what St. Patrick was known for, chasing the snakes out of Ireland.
Exactly, yeah.
But chasing the snakes out of Ireland was a metaphorical thing, not a literal thing.
Exactly,
you know,
yeah.
It was like the serpent worship, like, you know, and not something a lot of people talk about over here, though, Randy, like, you know. They actually think there was actually physically snakes in Ireland, and that's like the Catholic brainwashing of the Irish people, like.
Well, the entire, like I said earlier, the entire thing about the serpent has, in my opinion, been demonized, altered away from its original meaning. And there are a number of levels in which you can understand the serpent, even including, I guess, what you would call kind of the Kundalini experience itself, which is, you know, parallel to the serpent in terms of our physical anatomy, in terms of how we experience our physicality.
Sure.
But, you know, there are numerous, just layers upon layers upon layers of myths and religious ritual and beliefs and understandings connected to the serpent. We selected one of those out of the Bible, and even there, it's not clear to me that this was necessarily an evil. We just, you know, we talk about Enki and Enlil in a show a few weeks ago, and about the serpent in the garden. Well, the parallel to that is that the serpent was actually the one who was the liberator in that particular story, that particular mythology. And so, we stratified this whole thing. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just, you know, the thing is, you know, I know a friend of mine in Nottingham in the UK, and his wife is a nurse. I think she works with mental, in the mental wing, with, I don't know if they're mentally ill people or mentally impaired people. I'm not quite sure. But she knew where I was going, and, you know, and she was talking to me today, and she asked me, like, you know, I was telling her pretty much what I told you there, Randy, you know, and she's like, really, like, you know, she's shocked at, like, what happened, and kind of knows a little bit about it, like, but not that much. And she's like going, why do you think you see the serpents, like, and do you think, like, this is all in your mind, and that this is like you're just unlocking it through the brew, or do you? I said, no, I feel there's something else behind it, like, you know, and I keep going back, like, why does everybody see serpents, like, you know, and it really doesn't matter at the end of the day.
I think the answer to that is, and this doesn't even come from ayahuasca, but it does come from other types of altered consciousness. This is an archetypal image. I think it's hardwired into us, because my experiences in the past with anything that had to do with altered states, and that could be anything chemically, organically, or even just induced states from meditation or trance, is that this is an image that's anchored somehow into our subconscious. Well,
the way I say it is, you know, does it really matter if you concoct this yourself in your head and the brew helps you do it, or is actually an entity behind these these plant teachers that people call them, you know, the plant teachers of mankind. Does it really matter? At the end of the day, it's a healing, shamanic. It's like thought-provoking. It boosts your brain power. You know, it makes you feel good. You know, there's such a positive thing about it. I can't find anything wrong with it. And I'm not there to advocate it and tell people to go and do it. Do it if you want to do it. You know, look into it, research it first. You know, but you know, at the end of the day, I have my own theory on my own ideas and concepts about it, like, you know. Personally, I just find it hard to believe that 100% of the time that people see serpents, like, you know, that's just this weird concept that I can't get my head around, and it's a mystery, and I like mysteries, like, so that appeals to me, you know. And I just don't, I mean, I was talking to the lady, the nurse I was telling you about, and she said to me, well, you know, is it because somebody told you were going to see serpents that you've seen them? And I went, well, if you told me I was going to see a pink bunny rabbit, like, I'm not going to see a pink bunny rabbit, like, you know. So that theory, I understand where the people are coming from. They're trying to process why, you know, they're looking for answers like I would, but, you know, why 100% of the time do you see these serpents, like? And it's just, it's out there, like, it's totally bizarre, like. But the nicest thing has ever happened to me, Randy, I have to say. It was the nicest experience that has ever happened to me, and I just feel so spiritually rewarded for it. I've come away with love and compassion for the world. Not that I didn't have that, you know. And even the most beautiful thing happened after it. I actually climbed the Salcantay Glacier, like, you know, I never seen a glacier before, and I had a group of 16 people. They were 4 Spanish, 3 guys and a girl, an Australian couple, an Aussie, another Aussie and a Latvian, 2 Swiss people, friends, and just a lovely bunch of people, like, you know. And everybody was like from various walks of life and ages, and we all just kind of walked along in a group. And I was a bunch of 4 girls there, 4 English girls. We called them the Spice Girls because they were reminded us of the Spice Girls. But, you know, it was just nice to interact with people and have like because all these times I go around these places, like looking at megalithic sites and, you know, research and stuff, I literally fly here, there, everywhere, go to these random places in the middle of nowhere and go home straight away. And like, people just go, how long did you spend there? And I went, like, about an hour looking at a site. And they go, you're mad, like, you know. But, like, you know, I just want my eyes on it and see what I see. And sometimes I do see stuff. But it was nice to do something after that ayahuasca. And it was an intimate, kind of like an expedition, like, you know. And it was fun, like. And it was nice to connect with people. And, you know, I told them about my experience. And some of them were like, oh, I couldn't believe it, like, you know. People didn't even know ayahuasca was in Peru. They didn't even know it was there. They didn't even know the ancient sites were there other than Machu Picchu, like, you know. And I just thought that was crazy. I thought everybody knows about this stuff, you know, but...
One of the reasons why I asked you, James, what your environment was, I was wondering if you got to connect with the natural aspects, the sense of the earth spirits, water spirits, or anything like that.
Well, I thought there was a pool of water on the ground, and that's when I touched the pool of water, and that's where the earth goddess came out of it. And I'm like, okay, no. So, like, I mean, there wasn't any water nearby. I did get to go outside the ceremony center at one point, and the guy gave me a tour of, he actually asked me what I did for a living, like, and I went, astronomy background, like, and engineering, and he just lifted me and brought me out, and I literally had to half carry me, shuffle me with holding my shoulders, like, and give me a tour of the sky above in Spanish, like. I didn't understand a word he was saying, but I could recognize the constellations. I kind of pieced together somewhat, like. But the setting in the ceremony was beautiful. I have to say that, yeah. If you're going to do it, go and do it with the shamans, like, at a ceremony center. There was a retreat to do it in the jungle, but the timing didn't suit the times I was there. Literally, it had to happen the day after I arrived, and I had altitude sickness and everything, you know, so I hadn't even...
Oh, yeah.
I got it pretty bad. I was in bed for 24 hours, like. I was in bad shape, like. And after that, it was pretty good. Some people had it continuously. I just had it for a day. But I should say, you know, like, there is retreats into the jungle. It was a 3-day thing. I really wanted to do that, but, like, you know, I was gone by the time the next retreat was available, and maybe another time, but like, I mean, it's such a nice way to do it, was to go to the Shaman Center in Cusco. There's this place called the Shaman Center there, and they talk you through it, but it's not what people think. They're wary of you. They ask you your background, have you taken anything before, and yeah, psychedelic mushrooms are similar in the visuals, but not in the experience.
Right,
it's like I wouldn't say there's a spiritual aspect. Yes, it's very enlightening. It broadens your awareness of the world, and that there's other frequencies out there that we don't tune into. Yes, granted, but I think psychedelics can be explored as a recreational thing as well as like an experiential thing. But the ayahuasca is very much a spiritual thing. But I recommend people just go to the ceremony and then go to the jungle. You don't have to jump in off the deep end. Personally, I would have gone to the jungle if I had it offered on the table. I would have liked to have been in the setting. But it was nice there because there's people, they can vomit all over themselves, they can get the runs, and diarrhea and stuff like that. And so there was like a shower cubicles there and toilets next outside, so there was a facility there to be taken care of, there was the beds were comfy, and there was like lovely alpaca blankets and stuff, so what a beautiful setting. I must say though, the photos that I said I took, when I came home and put them on the laptop, Randy, I had orbs everywhere in the room. And now I've never got orbs on that camera. I've never got orbs on the camera before, Randy, ever. And I had the orbs at Sacsayhuaman, megalithic.
We saw orbs pop up. I've seen them pop up twice in photographs. It happened last year when we had an event here. And I saw them when I was out in Sedona a few years ago. I took some pictures of some friends of mine out in Sedona, and there were orbs in the pictures. And the last time we noted them visibly in the area, and it was last May during the supermoon. There was a group of people here that included some fairly well-known people like Duncan O'Finian were here, and we had a get-together, and there was an intense energy to it. So the orbs show up, I think, at times when we are conducting good energies, and they show up to kind of, I think, reinforce that. One other thing I wanted to ask you, off of the subject of orbs for a second, is since you've done the ayahuasca, have you now gone back to the psychoacoustics with a different perspective?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I literally discussed some of my book with ayahuasca, I took the opportunity, I was aware of this because I know that three authors, there's been several authors flock to, artists and writers and stuff flock to ayahuasca because of the creativity jump that they experience. And I know that Graham Hancock and Daniel Pinchbeck and guys like this, they talk about the experience, and Graham Hancock will tell you about his book Entangled that was given to him on an ayahuasca session, but literally, not like people think that he downloaded it word for word. I mean, he was showing the storyline, and every time he deviated from the storyline or lost track, he'd be able to root himself backwards, so it's not the way people think, it's something given to you for free. It's like things are shown to you, stuff that you want to know, and you didn't have the answer. Maybe it is in your head and subconsciously. I'm not too sure, and I don't even feel the need to try and figure that bit out yet. But, the psychoacoustics thing, yes, I was discussing that, and, I have something like 15 points of evidence in my head, and I have interlocked in different ways now, and I wasn't sure about them, and the jury was out on them, and I'm like, am I just making stuff up here? I'm making something out of something that's not really there. Am I reaching, and that can happen to an author, you can want the story to be there that's not there, and I try to follow the evidence all the time, I try to follow it as scientifically as I can, but eventually, you're going to have to break away for a bit of free thinking at the end of your, certainly with the megaliths, if you're looking for answers at megaliths, you can only follow the evidence so far, and then you have to use interpretation at the end of it, so best to follow the science as much as you can first, but just so on the scientific concepts, ayahuasca was showing stuff to me, you know, so totally revealing, bizarre, and outlandish, even for my own, like, I mean, I feel very privileged, and I don't even say that I'm in a hurry to go back and do it. It's not an addictive thing, Randy. It's not like going, oh, I got all this stuff for free and I feel great, let's go back and do it again. Like, you know, if I'm back in that region, yeah, I'll probably have another go, but I'm not in any hurry to plan that out, like, you know?
Yeah, well, most of the people I know that have done this kind of view this as something that they do in cycles of maybe every few years, and that for them it's kind of what my friend calls it. He calls it visioning. He basically goes because he's seeking to get a vision, to get clarity on things, to get information, and he's told me some information that he's gotten when he's done the ayahuasca that was actually insights, psychic, intuitive things that later on were confirmed with real-world information. So that's why I was asking you about your own intensification of, you know, what we would call mental or psychic capabilities, because a lot of people report that.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it, that the intuitive insights are definitely on the increase with me. I mean, you know, I'm just like, it's hard to say what intuition is to people. I think my idea of intuition was always that, you know, it's within your own brain, and that subconsciously you're aware of things, you know, but, you know, intuition's kind of like knowing something before it happens, like, you know, to me. And that, you know, you can put things together and figure it out at some point, but, you know, some people can be more intuitive and do it quicker than others, you know, and some people could do it subconsciously and not even know it. And is that a thought process in the brain? I know, and this is the way my head thinks, you know. And I am a very intuitive person anyway, but, like, I do feel it like a psychic intuition now, Randy. It's not like a logical intuition. I think it's kind of funny because I had a conversation with a lady about this, and I do think that women's intuition is totally different to men's intuition. That men's intuition is like a logical thing. It's like calculating and weighing the odds logically, scientifically, very, very quickly, and it's perceived as intuition, where it's actually just happening very quickly, quicker than like the human brain's conceived to operate. But like we really are slaves to the left side of our brain for the most part as males. Sure, but my ex now was she was lying in the bed with me one night, and I used to open my eyes, and she wouldn't. We'd be in the dark, and I'd be looking the other way, and she would know that I'd opened my eyes and that I was awake, and there's no way she could have known that. And that's, to me, is like a woman's intuition, where it's like that left brain thing. That's like totally. That to me is pure intuition, like psychic intuition that you're talking about. So I do think there's two types of intuition, like. So, but I do feel like that. Yes, I mean that pineal gland is like firing in all cylinders, and I do think that things can enter from like the outside realm, like. Culturally,
how separated are the people who are in these cultures that you visited in Peru from our Western culture? Are they fairly isolated, or are they somewhat plugged into what we call the Western world?
Well, I spent most of my time around Cusco, and it's westernized there. Like, I mean, the amount of Americans that are just landing there on a daily basis. Like, you know, there was people from all walks that I met, like, but, you know, there's just like, it's Touristville. The amount of tourists that are there, yes. I mean, it was in shaman restaurants, and, like, you know, they're sitting there on their internet, like, you know, with their web page and their Facebook page. So it's funny, like, it's like, I know, it's like, and there's this old shaman guy in the corner, like, you know, really eccentric looking, and he's just banging away, talking to people. And, you know, there's actually a few people, shamans, have connected with me on Facebook there, and even the shaman took down my email address after the session, like, to let you know of future ceremonies or big events and stuff, like, you know. So they're not afraid to come into the modern world. That's what I've kind of witnessed and seen. Yeah, they're not like these guys aren't just living in the jungle, but there is shamans that do that. You know, they kind of mediate with like middlemen, and the middlemen are like, you know, from shaman history or lineage or whatever. Like, it's like, you know, there's like a network of people that kind of congregate together.
So we really are living in a very plugged-in planet now, literally. I found the contrast of the image you just painted quite amazing. There was this whole picture that I got in my head of a shaman sitting in an internet cafe. But, you know, do you get the feeling like nothing's new, like that a lot of our technology now has echoes in ancient times? This is what I was talking about, you know, travel by flight in ancient times, because I really do believe there is evidence that, you know, in previous civilizations going back, they had what we call craft or UFOs or whatever you want to call them.
Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Yeah,
Egyptian
exactly.
hieroglyphs are really out there, aren't they?
But
they have yet to be explained. Like,
in my head, I kind of go to the place, well, is our technology some kind of crude assimilation of ancient forms of maybe higher technology? Is the internet a metaphor for a neural networking scheme that's going on within us biologically as well? You know, that's kind of where my head goes with this.
Sure. I think, the internet's a funny one because, you know, it's changed the world and it's continuing to do so, and they're trying to shut it down. Like, they don't want it to be as free as it is, like, you know, and it's like, you know, it's a good positive thing. It can be a bad thing as well, like, I think, but it's for the large part, it's good, like, you know.
Well, they're not going to shut it down. The cat's out of the bag. You see that the design of the internet, and you're an engineer, you understand this. The design of the internet is there is no internet. It is a network of networks, and it's global. And I've tried to imagine the biggest mother of a CME that could hit the Earth that would take out everything at once, and somehow I get the sense that these networks would still survive the way they were propagated and built. So, in a sense, the technology itself was designed to sustain the hit. Other than that, the attempts to censor it and suppress it are simply driving it into the dark nets anyway, and that's where it will go. All the things that we call bad and good happen. This is human chemistry. I mean, you can argue that people use this for human trafficking and drugs and contract murders and all of that, and it's all true. But you can't justify the elimination of the media based on the worst elements of it, because that justifies everything, because we are a people that are comprised of all kinds of impulses, all kinds of evils, as well as all kinds of good.
I think the bad guys would find another way to do it anyway, Randy.
It's just going to spurt out somewhere else. That's human nature.
Yeah, you know, and I just think it's a good positive thing. It definitely is, you know, and I don't think even ayahuasca would be where it's at today if it wasn't for the internet, because most people wouldn't know about it. Like, I mean, it's been so little known about it. It's just exploded in the last 20 years, Randy. You know, and you've got ayahuasca tourism now.
Yeah, I almost find that kind of sad, but I guess that's the way it goes.
I was thinking that initially too, Randy, but I don't know, and I think they're still preserving the shaman tradition. You know, they have ceremony centers. I think the ones in Brazil are a bit commercialized, but the place in Peru I went to, like, you know, was actually. The guy had a shaman shop, but he was like selling all sorts of stuff that was really good. He had meditation groups, you know. He wasn't just like a high street thing. You know? I mean, I actually went in. I seen the sign for ayahuasca, and it was near the main square in Cusco. And I went, right, well, I'm not going to do the retreat in the jungle. I'll go in here, and I booked it, and I got a receipt for it as well, which I kept. I just think it's weird that you get one of the most powerful psychedelics in the world and get a receipt for it, like. So. But
well, maybe it's a good thing.
I was then taken up to I was taken up to the Shaman Center, right? And then the Shaman Center was like this place where I actually went in and meditated, you know, and you know, so it wasn't that commercialized. It was like they're making sure it was all done in the right proper setting, like, you know. And I went into this meditation group beforehand, and then I was then taken out of there and then handed over to the shaman, and the shaman came down from the top. The ceremony was actually up near Sacsayhuaman, with the ancient megalithic site. And he built this on the edge of his, like, he hadn't, I wouldn't say a ranch, like, but, you know, it was like out his back garden on the edge of a hillside, you know, this place, like, it was done in a nice natural setting, like, so you know, there is places there that, like, East meets West or whatever you want to call it, that, you know, where they're bringing the Western culture in, and, you know, they're adopting to people, like, but they're trying to welcome that. Like, they see it as healing, and they don't care who they heal, Randy. That's the beauty of it.
That was the part of it that I was being optimistic about, because in a lot of ways, we talk about, well, ayahuasca tourism, and that sounds so tawdry.
It sounds wrong when you say it, yes,
but here's the other side of it. If more of the Western mindset gets spun around here, because this is a change in consciousness too. However we do it, it doesn't matter, but if there's a shift in consciousness, you hit the critical mass. If 3% of the world hits that shift, we change things. That's what I believe. And I see this as a good thing that's kind of come out of, you know, curiosity, but people get changed because of it.
Sure. And another thing, you know, I mean, you got to understand that you're bringing money to these people as well,
Mm-hmm.
and these guys need money. I mean, Cusco's not like a rich place, like Peru's not like a rich place, like, you know, there's people living there on buttons, really, like, you know, and it's good value for money for tourists to come there. But I mean, you know, ayahuasca session was about $100, so it was quite expensive in terms of what you can get for that in Peru, like. So, I mean, but that's been handed to the shaman. The shaman gets this, but it's like a job to him, Randy. You got to understand that. And it's like, you know, people are eating, you know, but he takes his job very seriously, like. He's there to heal the individuals that walk through his door, you know. So, you know, there's like, it's a bizarre setup, like, you know, but I think it's all good, like, and I had reservations, but then I hadn't seen it firsthand. And I was like going, okay, ayahuasca tourism doesn't sound right, but, like, you know, it's not a bad thing, and people are getting healed. You know, people are wanting there to explore the experience, and who's to say you have to be, like, a shaman to do it, like, you know? Who's to say you have to be a native, like? You know, it's like, yeah. Bring it to the world, you know, and it's definitely taken effect, and there's a lot more people know about ayahuasca than I actually thought, like, you know. I'm having conversations with people this week in the last 9 days, and you know, there is people that I've spoke to that have taken the powdered form of DMT and smoked it, and what they describe is totally different. Now, I probably would try that once just to see the contrast, but from what I gather, it's like too intense, too short-lived. You can't piece it together, you know, and you don't come away with it with anything. Whereas the ayahuasca is very much spiritual setting, you know, and they love that people come and enjoy their culture too, Randy. You know, it's like somebody's coming and embracing their lineage, their history. And this ayahuasca is going back thousands of years, apparently, like, you know. The one thing that really blows my mind the most is that they have these two plants that make the ayahuasca brew. That's another thing. The Serpents really gets me, and the fact that they actually know how to make ayahuasca. It's bizarre, because, like...
Well, the story behind that's rather interesting, because the chemistry behind ayahuasca, in terms of what it took to find these two specific elements that makes this work, because theoretically the body does not absorb the ayahuasca without the other element, and I don't know the names of these substances. But
one is the ayahuasca vine. They call it the vine of souls, because you can't meet the souls of your ancestors. Now, I didn't meet any ancestors, but I mean, I've given enough sessions, you may do, like, but, you know, it's a spiritual vine but this leaf, Randy, that you're talking about, switches off the enzymes in your stomach that kill the ayahuasca DMT. So it's this rare combination of these two plants out of the 100,000 that come from, like, South America. You know, how did they know these two out of these 100,000, like? You know, and it's not something that you do by trial and error either, because it's revolting to people. It's not a drink that you want to drink. You know, you wouldn't start making all these potions and concoctions and say, try this one. No, that didn't work. Try this one. No, that didn't work. You know, the chemistry, as you say, behind it is bizarre, like.
Yeah, somebody said in the chat room about the fact that it also helps people who have drug addictions and serious depression. And I've heard that as well. We know you don't suffer from depression.
you won't get, even on a bad day, you won't get me sad.
No, I get the sense of that. You know, it's your energy doesn't go in that direction. But I have had people tell me that it's changed them. And the stories are out there, the anecdotal evidence of people who have gone through, I guess what you would call kind of a shamanistic rehab experience. And I suspect that, it doesn't matter what path you take, the spiritual path eventually moves you, because I suffered from depression my whole life. But the more that I've gone towards the spiritual path, the less prone I am to that now, even though it's still, I guess what you would say, in the chemistry.
Sure. I suffer from an extremely high latency or decreased latent inhibition, and it's a long, complex thing to explain to people. I have actually worked with the spiritualist people too, Randy, because I understand them, because I have decreased latent inhibition. That inability to filter out information, but I'm able to if people with a high IQ, they excel in certain fields like engineering and science, and people with a low IQ can actually go insane with decreased latent inhibition. So it's not this wonderful thing to boast about, most people with Asperger's will have decreased latent inhibition, but if you have decreased latent inhibition, doesn't mean you're autistic. But, it's a core element of the autistic traits. But, I have worked with Asperger's people, and for me, it was very different for me, and I know that because I have this thing that I have harbored most of my life, and put it like this, if you showed me 10 gear cogs of various sizes and, all connected to each other, and you tell me which way you want to turn it at one end, and within a half a second I'll tell you which way it turns at the other end just by looking at it. And that's a visual thing to me. It's the way my brain processes. I have also dyscalculia, dyslexia with numbers. So, for me, it was very different for me because I think very visually anyway, and I got a lot out of it. And the creativity kind of boosted. There's creativity in there anyway, So I can see why that. I can see that people with depression would help too. So anybody with any kind of mental I'm trying to be politically correct here. Any mental dysfunction at all, I can see it helping, But I can even understand my social skills sometimes, where I don't know when to switch off the logical brain and the information and stop talking. It's really good for radio shows and really good for books.
It is, and
ranting information. But I do feel a very, very strong balance. And 3 people that I've spoke to, my friends, they go, "You sound so calm and happy." I'm like, "Am I always like that?"
Well, you are always happy. I'm not sure about calm sometimes. Hey James, I got my next guest queued up. He showed up, and I need to really thank you for coming on and sharing with us for this hour. Let people.
Randy, it was a pleasure. It was an absolute pleasure.
Wonderful. You're not a guest anymore. You can pull in anytime, my friend. Let people know where they can find you.
Sure. My main website is www.jamesswagger.com. And all my books are hosted there. I'm in the middle of a couple of publications. My first book was Newgrange Cosmology. I'm moving on to Newgrange Acoustics and the acoustics rock art that I spoke about, and that will have in some shaman ayahuasca information in there and shamanic rituals of ancient cultures too. So, but yeah, jamesswagger.com hosts everything in one place, and my CapricornRadio.com page is hosted there as well.
Cool.
But pleasure being here, Randy.
It was wonderful to have you on, and thanks again for popping up tonight. And we'll have you back real soon. I'll catch you on chat, I'm sure, in the next few days, and I'll hear you. You're going to be on Late Night in the Midlands with Michael Vera on, when is that again?
Tomorrow night. I'm actually on with Dr. Rita as well beforehand. I've got 2 shows back to back, and I nearly double booked.
Dr. Rita's an old friend of the show too.
Yeah, I had Dr. Rita on my own podcast, and I'm really looking forward to speaking with her. So I'm on Just Energy Radio tomorrow, and I'm on with Late Night in the Midlands straight after that, pretty much as well.
Very good. James Swagger, thanks again for coming on, my friend.
No worries, Randy. It's always a pleasure to talk to you as well, my friend.
Good night. Good night. Thanks, James.
Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
Chris Carter coming up next on OffPlanet Radio. We'll take a brief break here while we retool and reconfigure, and we'll be right back with Chris Carter.